the different organizations and groups, including the Rastafari communities, can come and be part of the stakeholders, whereby we give our inputs in terms of how do we want cannabis to be regulated. Because the main challenge that we are having as a country, our government is struggling to regulate cannabis because it's like any other crop, like your spinach, you can grow it anyway, you know. So they're having that challenge to say that how are they gonna be regulating? So we have the programs or projects like Matekwane Sandbox. They call it Matekwa. Matekwane. It's also cannabis in the indigenous language. Matekwane Sandbox through the Pakisa Lab report that they invited different stakeholders to come and give the inputs, and one of the suggestions was to have this sandbox whereby indigenous communities can do commercial research, whereby we have organizations like Marijuana Board of South Africa that I'm part of also, whereby they are doing research in terms of certifying cannabis distributors as a self-regulatory organization. We have other organizations that are led by white people that they prefer social clubs, and there's different models of social clubs whereby they're saying that they do things like restaurants, or they do some things like clubs, like your pub, but it's ganja, whereby members can come and register and then they can have access to go inside and enjoy their cannabis. But they're saying they're not trading, they are exchanging cannabis amongst themselves, whereby the farmers must grow and bring ganja there and then they exchange among themselves. But that is not what they're doing. They're selling. People, they just come in and sell. Some are strict with the membership, some are not strict with membership. So those are the commercial researches that we are having in South Africa that enable us to say that in 2027, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, the minister wants the report of the commercial researches that they have approved some, including this one that is a hope for many, of which is driven by Rastas. Even though we work with traditional leaders, we work with traditional healers because they also use cannabis. And like we said, the strategies that for government to consider the self regulations that we are trying to come up with, it's when we work together, because for them they don't have time to do this type of researches. But when we report to say we are working this certain group of people, we are not only the Rastafari, but the Rastafari interests are also covered within this space, and the report should be ready next year. The roadmap, the cannabis roadmap, it's the lifeline or deadline that was given by the Department of Trade and Competition is that next year, 2027, all the reports must come and must be tangible enough to say that what were the challenges and where it should be improved, and what is the progress. So in this month, the 27th of August, we're gonna be having the national dialogue, because some of the platforms that we are using through the Marijuana Board, because they're also recognized as part of the stakeholders of the national dialogue, it's whereby we're going to be trying to give the Marijuana Board the momentum and to vote for them to say that this is one of the stakeholders that the government must recognize when it comes to the 2027 report, to say it must also merge as part of the way that we want to see ganja being traded, because we want to trade ganja like, you know, the spaza shops. I don't know, in Ghana we have the what you call spaza shop, the shops that where you go, you can buy your groceries in the village or in the location. You don't need to go to town, where you get your daily utensils and your needs, you know, consumables. But this one's in the form of cannabis shops in our townships, in our villages, whereby we don't reinvent the wheel, because what we've been saying is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we need to formalize the market, because
Yes, Rastafari. Empress her line dropped off, and I'm sure she will join us very soon. So she's giving us a lot, and I'm sure she will come back and follow up on where she left off. Talked about the Cannabis Development Council of South Africa, the fact that the cannabis community has been involved, the fact that Gareth Prince suffered abuse and so had to go and learn the law to face the system to be able to defend his rights, which led to granting the rights to all others. They need to include the locals in the economic opportunities and have them access the needed opportunities. The fact that she's farming 200 hectares of cannabis. Yes, so Empress is back and she can take off from where she left off. Give thanks, Empress.
Messy about that, family. Messy about that. I had an incoming call that disturbed me. But what I was just saying is that there's so much that has been happening in South Africa, and I'm very proud of the Rastafari communities with various organizations that have been trying to support and rally around Rasgareth in his endeavors of trying to make sure that the industry does not close out the indigenous communities, because we have been saying this in many years, in many different ways, to say government must just tax the cannabis businesses like any other business the way they tax it, must not want to come with some miracle regulations that are not existing, because the challenge that we're having is that they're using Western researches, Western models, like the current situation that we're having of the THC level. We still struggle with what government is saying. We tried to prove to them they are trying little by little, but they're too slow, because at the end of the day, people, there's a demand, there's a lot of demand of cannabis. And when we grow ganja in South Africa, our ganja can't be what they are saying in terms of, they used to say 0.2%, and when you check that, that was the Western model that talks to the Western climate and weather conditions. But when coming to South Africa or Africa, it's difficult for ones and ones to get such low percent of the THC in cannabis or ganja. Even in hemp itself, like I'm embarking in one project and I've been struggling to get the seeds, because at the end of the day, even though we talk hemp, it can't be lower than 0.2%, because before it was 0.02%, and now they said just 2%, and we don't have that in practical way, and they acknowledge this. But when the law is being drafted or made, it's a total different department that is doing the law. It is not the research institutions, even though we work with universities and they always come with research to say that this does not talk to us. But when you check, whoever that is taking decision is people don't have, that does not have the knowledge, they don't have the experience, they don't even have time to research, they don't want to invest time in research, they don't want to invest resources in researching the indigenous land races, because we have what you call the land races, whereby it's our local strains that have been used many many years ago by the great kings from Xhosa tribes, Basotho, Bazulu. Before even I can mention the Rastafari, even Kimoshweshwe, they used to puff ganja traditionally so. And there's nothing that it was happening with what the government is trying to come up with, to say they want to suppress the percentage of cannabis. And that policy, it's a very red tape that is depriving even government to fully support cannabis a project. For them to support us, we must motivate about hemp. While we know that it's ganja what we are dealing with, even though we are doing products with reusing ganja, obviously, and doing products and whatever that we're doing. Because I remember in 2019 when we had AARG in South Africa, we were already, like myself, I was already displaying my products there, you know. Today, the same government have given support for us to do our trials in terms of quality, safety, proper branding, shelf life of our products. They are supporting that under the indigenous knowledge system and legacy farmers, because other departments are trying to put pressure to say that they can't ignore the fact that we are existing. It's only that cannabis itself, it's fragmented. It's a multidiscipline crop that we cannot shy away from it. That from ganja we get from your paper, we can get your automotives, we can get your biofuel, we can get your cosmetics, we can get food under nutraceuticals, you know, we can get so many things. But the problem is that some of the Rastafari people or members, they don't want to take responsibility, you know. They just want to be at the corner and make noise instead of facing the government in many ways and strategies that the same government is putting before us or we are proposing to them, you know. So we found that few understand what needs to be done. Like Raskareth can write to them to say, I'm challenging this, and he's taking it to court, while we do submissions to say this is not enough, because there's many ways of bridging the gap of us expressing ourselves in terms of how do we want to see cannabis being regulated, because it's us who are using it at the end of the day, it's not government officials. So what I can say, there's many opportunities. There's pilots programs and projects that have been done. We can also try to forge these ways, working together within the continent, to say that we can invite each other in many programs, can be virtually, can be physically. We can do skills transfer, skills development, whereby we can teach our sisters, because my cry is a lot to our sisters, them to say that um, we are too relaxed, we are too comfortable in our corners, and we need to gear up, because at the end of the day, the previously advantaged communities, like our the offsprings of the oppressors, you know, children of the colonizers, they are running with the green economy. You know, they're opening these dispensaries, they're opening the shops, they're opening the clubs, and we see few of the sisters being in the industry, but they've been selling ganja from homes from long time, you know. But I appreciate love the few that we are having, that are always trying to reach out and who are trying to make it right, because at the end of the day, as long as we can put pressure, that is how we work in South Africa. The more we put pressure, the more we are visible, the more we are making our mark and our noise constructively in many strategical ways, we're gonna get our portion, because cannabis it's a very big industry, you know. So what I can just say is that we need to find collaborative programs that we can do. The very same different government from wherever where we are, they can support such, you know, more especially when you talk about research. It's simple for government to invest in the research programs. Like here in South Africa, when you talk about cannabis research, they are happy to say they can be part of that. Even if you can say you want to do cannabis research, they can invest in that, you know. So those are the angles or strategies that we should also look upon, more especially in countries whereby government is rejecting and rejecting. We need to, because I know for a fact that from 2018, a lot of countries was awakened by the South African judgment ruling, even though policies are still holding us back. But South Africa has sparked that light in many countries, even overseas. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I've seen that in Jamaica, they are still focusing more on the sacrament, not talking about the industry, and that is a big problem. That wherever where we talk ganja, we have been free, not that much, but we've been using ganja, right? We've been puffing ganja from our homes, even though the police will come and brutalize. But let's also pronounce the industry, the business, and how much did Rasta suffer for ganja, and how much ganja Rasta must get exemptions, you know, because most of elders here in South Africa, they feel that they can't buy licenses or permit, they must be exempted. but we need to have a collective voice and something in black and white that illustrate that when you say you must be exempted, who and how, who did what and when, so those are just challenges that we are having, but I think we're getting somewhere, because really and truly we don't want to be left behind. And I so wish that we can have a very big continental council that can assist other countries that are facing the challenges and being oppressed by government. That is how far I can say, and I give thanks.
Rastafari, give thanks, Empress. You said so much. Um, Empress, you mentioned you leave immediately, but I think some of us have some one or two questions we want you to take before you leave, if you would permit.
Shukrilayam, I'm here. Give thanks.
Yes. So, Empress, one thing I want to ask is why is it that some government officials even admit that ganja is not such a problem, even in SA, yet find it difficult to agree to fully free the herb? Can you share
Okay.
any idea? Yes.
Yes, with my experience is that most of our African government has been captured by the Western slave masters who are funding the administrations of our government in different countries. Even though it's Africans leading, but you find that they're captured and they get remote controlled to say this must go, this must not go. Because like I can tell you that we have officials, government officials who are using ganja. We have people that were not using ganja freely before, and they were hiding themselves, but now they can little bit comfortably to say that, yeah, this is the way to go. But when they are in their boardrooms, when they are sitting there, they are always taking wrong decisions, because at the end of the day they will come and tell us about the percentage that does not exist in us, in our climate, while there's a research that have proven that they will rather source some seeds out of nowhere and want to come impose that to us. So what I can say is that our African government and governance does not talk to us in the maximum as yet. That is why they can acknowledge that cannabis is an indigenous crop. It falls under African traditional medicines. When you go to China, I will have to use example as China, because they're having this patriotism that nobody can shake them. That's why they're doing so well and they're everywhere. In China, you get the biggest pharmacy that is running traditional medicines. Even if we can Google that or use AI to search the information, the biggest traditional medicine pharmacy in the world is in China. China, they regulate all their traditional medicines. So our problem is that we don't regulate our traditional medicines, of which cannabis also fall under African traditional medicines. Here in South Africa is in the act that we have the act that talk about ATMs. They call it ATMs, African traditional medicines. And then again, the other bonus is that we have an IKS Act, whereby it started with the Khoisans, where they were recognized, but automatically other other indigenous group are falling under that act. So we have two weapons that we can use in terms of you assisting ourselves to regulate cannabis. But our government, because it's captured, is taking them forever to accept simple things that will enable the green economy, and radical economical transformation that we are longing to see as Africans. So for me, that's where my overstanding is in terms of why our people don't really overstand, or they can't acknowledge. It's because they can't regulate, because they're captured. Because if we should regulate our traditional medicine, it's very simple. For me to know that alu detox, I don't need someone from the university to tell me that, but I know from my granny, I know that is the traditional way that we've been detoxing, example, you know. But the science is there just to do what do they say about science? Because sometimes everything that they want to do, they must put science on it to validate. It's just there to validate. But we know that indigenously, example, a mountain garlic or garlic, it's a anti-inflammation herb, you know. We know that we don't need somebody to come and tell me if my son, the 2 days baby is sick, overheating, I must infuse garlic with warm water and I must give the child to drink for the child's temperature to come down. But for them, every time science must be there to validate. So the only problem is that our government has been captured, my brother, and we see so many political parties coming because they get funded by this white monopoly system that is continue to divide and rule and benefiting and sucking us the economy of Africa, you know. Yes, I give thanks.
Give thanks. Yes, Empress says she has to join another meeting, but can we take 2 more questions before she leaves? Please. 2 questions. Do we have Empress Sadia, please?
Yes, give thanks for Empress for the wonderful presentation given. It's great to see the efforts that you're doing. My question is really not a question because I think that you guys are fighting a very good fight, and I'm very sure you have done some scientific, contributions or evidence for the court. If you haven't, you can enlighten me. And so that's what, if you are giving them all the facts, and in your earlier submission, you had a lawyer that won the case, and so these are all facts. You also mentioned that lobbyists from the Western powers um, bid, bid their claim. I'm struggling to see how to say it. So that's what is fighting against your efforts. So when you look at it, no matter how you present your case, there are external forces that are also fighting. So it's a very hard fight. But in terms of evidence, since they are using Western arguments and to counteract abolition, the advocacy of marijuana, there are also Western scientific evidence to support it. So one of such is the CNN comprehensive report that was given by the CNN medical correspondent Samjay Gupta. It was greatly aired. I don't know if South Africa had the sistering and the brethren had any hold on such documentaries. If you did, maybe some of those evidences can support your work. So if you can speak a little bit about that, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Can I add my question to it?
Yeah, sure, please.
Question. Thank you very much. Greetings to all. Peace and love, Yes, I feel that traditionally or in South African culture, ganja is well ingrained than we find it in Western Africa or Ghana for that matter. I knew that, I think I read somewhere that it was given to nursing mothers and then weaned babies, and they call it daga. And I'd like to know how well ingrained is ganja is in the South African culture. I think I overheard her talking about kimososho, something like that, referring to kimososho. But could she give more examples of how ganja is well ingrained in South African culture? Thank you very much. To the extent that the Dutch abolished it in, I think, 1876 in South Africa, if my memory serves me right. Yes, thank you very much.
Isis, can I come in through you, Chair?
Yes, Empress, please.
Give thanks for the questions. Yeah, to respond to my sister in there, yes, we do have scientific evidence. Like myself, from 2020 during COVID, I've been working with the University of the Free State. There's a pharmacologist there, the university, and they have the center what is fortunate enough, there's about 4 or 5 universities in South Africa that are having the IKS Center. And in those IKS and International Knowledge System centers, they work with African traditional medicines. Maybe the list is about 14 of African traditional medicines, and cannabis is one of those. So personally, I've been working as a researcher with the University of the Free State, whereby I supplied them with my raw material, of which is the cannabis flowers, and they will do scientific tests to say what does this specific strains or types of ganja has in terms of medical benefits, what also illnesses can it heal, you know. So I am currently working with about 14 researchers at the university, of which each of them have the specific project that they're working on. Some are into diabetes, some are into cancer, some are into glaucoma, things like that, you know. So what basically the university has been doing, because the same professor of the university, the pharmacologist, he's part of the stereo committee, whereby there's a stereo committee, the cannabis stereo committee in the presidency that is meeting quarterly. So those committees, they're the ones, because they consist with different stakeholders. Even for those committees members, we had to vote and write the letters to say we are nominating, actually not voting, we are nominating this particular person to be part of the stereo committee, and we had to motivate why. So that professor, he also sits with the likes of Ras Gareth and other stakeholders in the studio committee, where they're meeting quarterly, and they're the ones that is assisting the minister of trade and competition, because at the end of the day, ganja is business besides being a medicine. So they do give these reports to say that this is how, and they do give suggestions to say this is how it should be. Ganja should work around, you know, to benefit our people, because they have scientific proofs, research institution to say that it can heal 1, 2, 3 diseases and these types of ganja. That is why they end up coming with the legacy project, whereby the legacy project specifically focus on the indigenous farmers that have been growing ganja before it can be legalized. And to answer the second brethren, yeah, the question was what the ganja being used, how much is being used, or like, yeah, ganja or cannabis, they call it dacha in South Africa. I'm not sure why they come. There's so many names for ganja. Anyway, it's international herb, but they also call it dacha. And some of us as Rastas, we're not comfortable because we thought the name dacha is associated with the drug, a vibe on it. But we have people who are not rastas. There are so many people who are puffing ganja. Like I was mentioning, King Mushweshwe is the king of Basotho tribe. You know, he used to have, even if you go to his museum now, when you visit South Africa, where they portray the Basotho culture within South Africa, because Lesotho was part of South Africa before, but they separated the land within the country and say it's another country. So that king used to have the ganja tree in his yard. You know, the king will have like a village, and in his house, in his palace, he used to have a courtroom. And in that courtroom, before, not inside the room, but outside at the door, there was a ganja tree that is planted there. And what they will say when the tourists come, they will tell them that normally when the king is gonna sit, when he's having a case, maybe there's a complaint in the village, or there's a case that the king must sit, and the king will puff ganja before the court case, while his two right men, they're playing a craft or a chess outside. The one that will win the craft game or the chess game, he's the one that is going to be the advisor of the king for the day for that court sitting. But the king himself, he will be puffing ganja to get meditation and to meditate about how to lead the court proceedings for the day. So with that example, I'm just giving it to say that ganja has been used indigenously. We have the Lesotho ganja, and so said that when you check in Lesotho, the government also legalized cannabis, and they have more advantage more than our way of government is giving licenses and permits to. In South Africa, you get a specific permit for a specific thing, but in Lesotho, you get one permit that is doing everything. You can trade, you can export, you can process, you can do whatever with one permit. But what is happening, sad enough, is that our people don't have resources, but they have lands. You will buy a license for 500,000 in Lesotho, but you don't even have irrigation. You don't even have money to put a security fence. You don't even have money for paying your resource, human resource. You don't even have money to just do a simple setup of starting to commercialize, but they're having licenses. So what is happening? There's white companies, a lot of them that are flocking in Lesotho. They have a blueprint in Lesotho because these people will rent out their farms, their permits and their lands because they don't have money to kickstart. Unlike South Africa. In South Africa, you get a license to plant hemp and process, transport and store, but you can't export. You can't have seeds business. If you want to register seeds, the specific a permit altogether. If you want to export or import, is a different permit altogether. But the government can support. We don't see many of South Africans selling their permits or having white companies dominating like Lesotho. To answer again, we have Xhosa tribe, of which the tribe of Nelson Mandela. you know those tribes, the Asian woman and the ladies, they're well known by having the big chalice, a long chalice that they will always puff of ganja in ceremonies, in daily uses. They will puff ganja. Even today, when we check in South Africa, the most progressive province is the Eastern Cape. Even there was a time whereby government was imposing hemp to them and coming with many millions, I think 54 million rands they invested, and they came with this white company that wants them to plant hemp. They rejected that altogether to say, we are not doing hemp. We've been planting cannabis, and your hemp is going to cross pollinate our indigenous crops, our indigenous land race. So in that region, the ganja has been controlled. Rastas are owning, I can say, 5% out of 100%. 95% is indigenous communities that have been selling ganja and that have been traveling up and down with ganja. Same with Swaziland ganja. In history of South Africa, Swaziland ganja has been transported illegally more than zillion times, and they've been doing so much so well. But pity, government, they get you, they lock you, they ban your farms, they ban their farms day in day out, but they build so many big houses, big homes, buying big cars because of the green economy you know so yes, the use of ganja is very popular in South Africa. Actually, people puff ganja like nobody else's business, and people are free to the fact that they must not be visible when they're puffing ganja, but they become visible. Even in Cape Town, in the same building of Parliament, same street down the road, there's two shops just walkable out of Parliament, out of court. There's shops all over. People, they puff ganja for the fact that even when Raskareth go to the court, they will puff ganja outside and show them we are the ganja rulers as Rastas. So ganja, to be honest with everybody in South Africa, compared to other countries, I can say we have leverage. It's just the policies and the brutality that we still find other policemen and women, they're typical. They will still come and lock Rasta for having ganja, because some of the people are not rastas, but they will have lots of ganja in their possession. You can see it's a business. They don't even have any paperwork of any organization supporting them. And I'll be asking them on Facebook, our people in this era, 2026, you still have lots of bags of ganja without nothing to protect yourself. It doesn't make sense, because there's a lot of organizations, like I'm saying, there's a marijuana board of South Africa. It's a board that is certifying people to distribute. It's some of the paperwork that people can have to say that at least I'm having something to protect myself, you see. So it's one of those things that ganja is a natural herb that no one gonna control it. We're giving it by our ancestors, by our creator. We can't change it. It's just that the government must listen to us, and we must also be consistent and try to formalize ourselves in many possible ways, that when we approach them, they can hear our story once and for all, and they can do a bit in terms of doing justice towards this, because we are looking forward to the 2027 milestone, because they have what they call the roadmap to cannabis. I think it was established a year ago, and it was given 3 years as part of doing the research in many ways that government can come and get the reports and look on what works, what does not work. Like on the 27th of August, like I'm saying, we're going to be meeting in Johannesburg and trying to convince them to say this is the work of the marijuana board, what they have done, and how far are we, and how are we self-regulating. So we need to have our facts straight so that government can give us an audience and really go back and report something, because the president, they always have the cannabis speeches on their budget votes, on their opening of parliament. But when we break it down technically, it still does not talk to us to the level that we're expecting is to talk to us, Give thanks. If there's any more question, the items we can have maybe for 10 minutes, and then I can be free. Give thanks.
Thank you so much for answering our questions, and keep up the good job.
Give thanks, family.
Yes, so Empress is here with us. If there are more questions, we can bring them up, but is there any? If not, we'll introduce our next speaker. Are there any more questions? So Empress Mimie, we give thanks so much for the wealth of knowledge you have shared with us. We are hoping you would have a one-on-one conversation with us where you lead a 2-hour conversation on the subject so that we can also engage you with so much questions that we have to appreciate or to bring us to the level where South Africa has reached, to appreciate the challenges that you are dealing with, and to help us finally abolish cannabis prohibition in Africa. Empress, we appreciate your presence so much.
Greetings. I have one question. What era was it? What time was it? Yeah, blessings. What time was it that they was using the herb to help in terms of judgment? What era was that? Peace and love.
Okay, it was this thing started a long time. It started as a personal, individual case, you see, whereby the lawyer Rasta, famous Rasta Rascaret priest, was charged and with ganja possession and utilizing ganja because it was not legal that time. I remember from his court case, when I rise to be Rasta, it was 1997, and already by that time, I think 1998, 1999, Rastas used to march to support him in different regions of the country while he's in Cape Town. But in 2018, he won the case that ganja is not a drug, and he was unfairly charged because he could not practice his law a profession because he was having a pending court case. So he was having a record. He could not practice from as early as 1998, 1997, as far as my memory recall. But in 2018, that is when the Constitutional Court gave the judgment to say the brother was not guilty and cannabis is not a drug and cannabis must be removed from the Drug Trafficking Act of South Africa. You're over, my brother. So from 2018, that is when we saw this radical transformation in terms of many countries starting to legalize portions of ganja, number of trees all over the world, and African countries are still dragging their feet to tap into what had South Africa led. So from 2018 and 2024, it was when we had this, because I think from 2018, the Judge Zondo, the proceedings judge, gave recommendation that the cannabis must be removed from the Drug Trafficking Act. So that means when the cannabis must be removed from the Drug Trafficking Act, there must be procedures and processes taking place That means the law had to change. So for the law to change, there must be the bill. The bill must be drafted. And before the bill can be passed to be the act, there must be public participation where government is taken to the people, whereby people are getting opportunity to do oral presentations and also verbal submissions. What is this? Written submissions. So those are the processes that are taking place, and the report must go back to the presidency, and the president must sign the bill to say, with all these recommendations and whatever the outcomes, this is what we are taking, and we can formalize now to say we are having the act. So in 2024, that was done, and there was reviews because of the pressure that the government, the police was still harassing people and missing the information. So at the end of the day, the act had to be reviewed. So in the country currently, we don't have the final act, but we're having the bill that has been circulating. So now we are waiting for the outcome from the 2025 inputs that we have given to say that this is how we want cannabis to be, the cannabis industry to be driven. And that is where Gareth, on the 31st of July, he was back again in court, because in June, I agree the submission was made in March. And then out of that, the brother wrote to the Constitutional Court to say that he did not agree with government proposals. So for us, when we don't agree, there's many ways you can challenge the court, or you can express yourself in the written submission or oral submissions. And when the outcome of the bill comes, and if it does not cover our submissions, we have the right to challenge. So Gareth has challenged and wrote to the Constitutional Court to actually open the case against the government, against the Constitutional Court, to say that what the Department of Correctional and Justice is doing, it does not talk to us. They still not talk, and they still don't address some crucial issues that are depriving our people to benefit in the economy of cannabis, you know. So currently, the 31st court case, I haven't got the exact results, but I assume that they have postponed, as they postponed from June to July. So it was just in July 31st, and I've been in many programs. I just came from the 2 days gender-based violence and femicide, or economical empowerment for the victims and the survivors of this pandemic within our community, whereby I came with the idea that we need to empower our Rastafari women, and we had a different department of government, including the Department of Small Business Development, whereby we were also talking about cannabis and how far we as the country. So I haven't really followed up with the outcome of the 31st July, but definitely, Raskofi, I am looking forward in engaging more. And if it means we must support ourselves in terms of having our own trainings and workshops, or having us as a backup to say whenever where there's a challenge, we can find how do we fund ourselves to come and face the government. If it must be the Rastafari Continental Council approaching the Pan-African Parliament, or Organization of African Unity, whatever which way that we must fight. We must always remember, I'm always there. I can always also make my efforts in terms of supporting wherever where there are challenges to address this international help, you know. Give thanks.
Give thanks.
Yes, give thanks so much, Empress, for the assurance, for collaboration, and also making this thing work. Like, we are emphasizing abolishing cannabis across, reaching the finish line. So Empress will continue to work. But this brings me to my last question, if you permit. Please, why is it important to distinguish between cannabis policy change and policy implementation? Because through your conversation, there's one thing I've recognized, that there can't be a policy change, but implementation differs. So why is it important to distinguish between the two? I appreciate it, Empress.
Yes, the implementation, like in South Africa, it's a big problem. We have good policies, right, that you can read and feel comfortable, but the implementation talks something different, because the people who are doing policies it is not the role players on the grassroots. You see, that is the dilemma that we are facing more time. And most of the time, these people, they do these things because they get paychecks. They don't do these things because they have it in their hearts to do so. That is the only problem. You know, the way of the governance is not the moral governance of Haile Selassie, unfortunately. It's dominated by democratical ideas of Western philosophies of capitalism and so on and so forth. So the only challenge is that they are good policies at times, but the implementation does not talk to that, because people who are doing these things more time, they do it without the role players, or people that they should be actually working with hand in hand. That's what I can say.
Give thanks so much, Empress. And we'll continue to work together. We'll follow up the conversation. We will not take so much of your time, and we are blessed to have you on this mission with us. We trust that we'll reach the finish line with RCC involvement. Thank you. Daddy B said, big up, Sister Mimie, lessons to learn and apply. And I don't know if he has something to say before you exit. Mr. President, Daddy B, would you say something before?
I just want to applaud Sister Mimie for her perseverance in this business. I remember 2019 or so in SA when she worked with, is it the Free State government or something, and we had a very wonderful engagement on cannabis. It's gratifying to note that we're still on the trot, and we're looking forward to abolition prohibition eventually. Give thanks and praise.
Greetings.
Rastafari.
Greetings, Daddy Bosco. Yes, I remember, 2019. I'm someone who likes to be excited, and I love people to see what opportunities we have in South Africa. And we were fortunate enough to have the ARG hosted in South Africa, and our government fully supported that. It was a very high level of hosting the Rastafari community, with no one was thinking that the government can really take us to that consideration, but it was done, and that was like 2019. So you can imagine where we are now. So next time I will plead that, in my closing, that when we have such conversation next time, let's include the different government officials or departments. Let's have a strategy of inviting them so that they can hear themselves how far are we in terms of the progress towards this green economy, so that they can also rehabilitate their mindset, and when they go and talk within themselves internally, they can have something they can talk about, because sometimes it's just a stigma or the taboo that our African leaders are having. They don't want to free themselves up from mental slavery in many indirect ways that I have observed from far. With all these court cases from Kenya being rejected or other countries being rejected. But all that I can say is that Aluta continua I. The road was never easy and sweet, and the hotter the battle, the sweeter the victory. Give thanks.
Rastafari, give thanks. Yes, the hotter the battle, the sweeter the victory. We are still discussing across the finish line. And Empress Mimie just gave us a take. Now we'll move to our next speaker, Jahpila, who is also facing issues in Kenya. Jahpila, please give us your take on the topic. Rastafari.
And Chair, I'm gonna have to switch. I'll be listening, but I have to switch locations because I'm on my way to a fundraiser for Shashamani Foundation. So I will log back in when I get to my destination. All right. Give thanks. But good discussion. Good discussion.
Yes, Empress, give thanks. So yeah, we'll hope you join us back and give us your presentation. Give thanks. So Jahpila, please come in, my Lord.
No record. Yeah, give thanks for the word sound and power. and for the knowledge, yes, and the information shared. So I there was a period around 2017, where we got also 2017 is when it was a peak, but this started from even 2014, where there was a policy conference in South Africa, and we were following up on events on South Africa, because South Africa continued to inspire I&I in Africa as the place where we have a huge population of Rastafari, presence of Rastafari, So it has always been on I&I to always check how they are able to overcome various obstacles that is always on the way. So in South Africa, they had the CRL, where they were highlighting the 47 challenges that are faced by the Rastafari community. And we were taking these challenges and also checking across East Africa, like what difference do we have, or what is there that is challenging the Rastafari community in South Africa that maybe we have overcome in Kenya or in parts of East Africa, Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. And we came to realize most of the challenges we are facing are similar. So it became also a priority for I&I to start to address these challenges. And among these, there was issues of ganja, there is education, we had in the economic and employment sector. So we said first we start with education, and that's why from the society of the Rastafari Society in Kenya, there was a petition, because at that time Rastafari children were being denied, to study in school because of their cultural Rastafari culture and their dreadlocks. And by 2019, we won this. So we continue to tick the box, and we say we also have ganja. Ganja has a very big history back in Kenya. This was used by the freedom fighters, the Mau Mau, who are in the forest, the dreadlock. And in the forest, it was very cold, at some times, and the weather there is harsh, but they had to endure this. And from the history and from the narration we have, they use ganja, for their spiritual upliftment and meditation, to hold and to be able to withstand the harsh conditions during the war with the British. So in Kenya, it has been the government policy to demonize, the struggle of the Mau Mau. And because Rastafari carried this legacy of freedom from suppression and subjugation, so the same is extended to I&I community. Therefore, we could not continue to be at the back. We have to be on the front, checking that even South Africa, they're already having marches, advocating, petitioning in their courts. We are like, this is the right time for I&I to raise up our voice and come in the, presence. So specifically, we directed this petition towards the spiritual, because first of all, when Rastafari in Kenya come and address issues of economic, sometimes we are at a little bit disadvantaged, because we are not like in the corporate sectors of people who invest heavy amount of capital, maybe to be respected or to get attention. But since Rastafari was accepted as a religion, of which this was already a big milestone, we say Rastafari is not a religion, it's a levity, it's our culture. But they used to call us a cult. They used to call us sects, long time. But now we say it's better they refer to us as a religion than referring to us as sects. you know, and such groups that are illegal, you know, groups. So we took out in the direction of advocating for the spiritual, because, you know, most of our people are very religious, especially in Africa and in East Africa. You know, they are religious and they believe in the church, and you can't take that away from them. So when you come in a spiritual angle, they have also a way of articulating or understanding, because now we have also to educate our people and show them, and also you know, seek out to them and make them know the situation, because Rastafari, we suffer for the herb, whether you use it or not. We are stereotyped as a ganja smoking community. We face harassments, such without warrants, simply for being Rastafari. Therefore, there was no harm for advocating on the same. And as this was going on, we realized also, because for the spiritual, it is at times limited to the Rastafari community or the individual who share the same, but we have the entire continent, the entire nation. So as this petition was going on from 2019, we also formed a Hemp Association of Kenya to bring not necessarily only the Rastafari community, but the entire Kenyan cannabis and hemp cultivators and those who want to engage in the business, you know, how we can come together, research, you know, so that we have a balance. As His Majesty say, the spiritual and the material also, we need more balance. And it was not easy because the government was not ready to allow this, you know, but it happened, and this association was formed, registered, and currently we are at the steps of getting licenses for planting, which we are limited for only at the current time for research, you know. So it's like, yeah, you know, the steps, His Majesty say, journey of 10,000 miles begin with those single steps that we keep making. So in the court, during this ganja petition, before the ruling, we faced various government authorities, which include also those departments that are for psychotropic substances and drugs, and we put them into serious debates, you know. First of all, we showed them that ganja, and they all agree that ganja is useful also for medical, as they also testified that it is used for to alleviate pain in cancer patients, arthritis, glaucoma, autism. Also in the economic part, they accept that the hemp, cannabis is very useful. So we asked them, how come we have products in Kenya that are being sold, hemp powder, hemp seeds, shampoo, cold press oil, CBDs, mouthwash, you know, and different kind of hemp-related products that are imported and sold by the authority of the government, approved by the National Standards Bureau. But Rastafari cannot produce, is not allowed to produce our own CBD oil, or even sell our hemp seeds, which are very, very highly nutritious in omega-3, omega-6, and even omega-9. So the court also found to it that there were also double standards being applied. The ruling, in the ruling, the judge dismissed the case. It was also very, very politically instigated, knowing that if we will pull up and it was a victory for I and I, it was going to give an impression that Rastafari only Rasta can liberate the people, as Buju Banton once sang and said. So they want to change a style to be that it's a political governor or a president aspirant who maybe will come to free up, as opposed to Rastafari. So in the ruling, as I said, they dismissed, but on the ruling, they highlighted that the prohibition of cannabis in Kenya need a revival. This is in the ruling, of which I will share with my Lord, so that everybody can have a chance to go through it, the rule of the ganja petition in Kenya. So it was stated that it will no longer be an issue of Rastafari, and the judge also emphasized that we need a national conversation in Kenya, because most money are being wasted in the security sector. These are the police who are arresting and prosecuting for small quantities of marijuana. Hereby they are misusing our taxpayers' money, which could go to other security issues. Like, for example, we have robbery with violence, we have gender-based violence, femicides, and certain serious crime. The court also emphasized that we cannot continue to be like the proverbial ostrich, which continue to bang their head on the sand, ignoring that cannabis is very widely used in Kenya. So for this meantime, we have filed for the petition to continue to challenge of the same, for we felt the verdict that was given, there was still loopholes. And also it's going hand in hand. We are doing also public participation in the ground, workshops, media tours, and interviews to continue to highlight and educate our people towards to rally around this cause, to support I&I, for the decriminalization, and the entire legalization of marijuana, for Rastafari and also for Kenyan and for the, I&I people. And is at the end, it's true, we came to see that everything where Rastaman say, it's come to pass. Rasta said, legalize the ganja. Long time when I growing up as a youth, we know just ganja is the healing of the nation. Now they are coming with different terminology, saying medical cannabis, industrial cannabis, hemp, recreational marijuana, but at the end are just ganja. Ganja is the healing of the nation. And this is what our ancestors, the Rastafari elders, told them long time, and they said, went around, but it's still even proved up to now scientifically that really ganja, whether in the medical field, economic field, different sectors of life, the plant is holistic. And yeah, for this, we just keep on. And for right now, the case is still on. It's now 6, it has taken us 7 years, and we don't wish for it to go more than even 9 or even 10 years without us realizing the victory, We encourage I&I also to share different documents and also knowledge, especially in the countries where they have been able, to overcome this and, get victory either through court, parliamentary system, so that we can always share more, because, it's Africa time now, we are rising. The youths are also tired, of sitting in the back and pointing fingers. We want to do for ourselves what we have to do for ourselves. Yeah, so give much thanks. If there's any question, we just pick it up from Blessed Love, Majesty.
Yes, sir, my Lord. Give too much thanks, Jahpila, for bringing up to speed with efforts ongoing in Kenya to abolish cannabis prohibition. We invite our third speaker, Ras 7 Fireside. I'm sure we have some questions we'd like to ask, but after the other presentations, we'll take down your questions. So please note down your questions. We invite Seven Fireside Kwasi Anokye to give us his presentation on the topic across the finish line, abolition of cannabis prohibition in Africa. Seven Fireside.
Thank you, Ras Kofi. I just want to take the opportunity to thank Press Kex, for standing firm for the ganja in Ghana, up front. Of course, thank the Advocacy Commission of the RCG. And then we must extend it to the whole continent, what we're seeing in South Africa, what people are doing for the ganja. Jahpila and the brethren, the Kenya Rastafari Society, what you're doing over there. Other parts of Africa, we know they're doing it in Sierra Leone too. Russ Lyrics has been keeping us updated about what you're pushing over there. We know it's happening in Jamaica and the Caribbean, in the US, wherever we find ourselves. Yes, people are pushing seriously for another phase of this thing. We can even talk about it as a paradigm shift, So yeah, again, thank you. And I just want to make one point. Just to add to what we have been talking about and to think about our how we're approaching this thing. The point I want to make is that in Africa or among Black people, the words legalize and decriminalize are not what we really, really want to say. There's something we want to say, and it just happens that these words are there and we're using them, but that's not what we want to say. They don't come close to what we feel and think. King Selassie, the emperor, has already told us that for us not to make what we say correspond with what we feel and think is detrimental to a country and its people. He says it's like pushing ourselves into an unforeseen precipice. So in this context of talking about freeing up the ganja, what is this unforeseen precipice? In the Black world, everywhere legalization has been granted, speaking of South Africa, which Sister Mimie talked about very, very thoroughly, comprehensively, give us a solid picture. In Jamaica, other parts of the Caribbean, and even to some extent, Ghana's, kind of like modest reforms. Elsewhere, the persecution continues. Let's face that fact. We hear things like, this is not what we asked for. This is not what we want. What we feel and think is that the police should not bother us when we light a fire or when we grow or carry the herb. That's the abolition of prohibition, not legalization. Legalization is other people's desire. Let me explain. Legalized marijuana is a 1960s US counterculture slogan. That's the hippies, right? It was promoted mainly by Lema, Lemar, that's, legalized marijuana and the legalized marijuana movement among white people, right? But they had the media. So what they're saying is what we'll be hearing more of. You don't hear about Nameneba or anything like that. So that's what we're hearing, right? So in the 70s, Lema folded into something called Amorphia, and then it folded into something called NORML, NORML. It's an acronym. I'm sure you can look it up. And they started pushing legalized marijuana since the 70s, right? In fact, early 70s. So we're going to see, by the time this term reaches us, right, we have overlooked the fact that it's loaded with its own meanings, right? As Jahpila was saying right now, terms like industrial, medicinal, recreational, sacramental, all these are contrivances, fabrications that you're making over there, right? Has very little to do with what we want to say, right? That is not how Africans relate to this plant. It's a holistic plant. We use it. That language is the language of Western regulatory systems that want to license, tax, and supervise marijuana. When we ask for legalization, we're asking colonial administrative categories to please make room for us. And Rasta is supposed to be the freest, right? This is not what we want. So Peter Tosh understood this. In 1976, he sang Legalize It because there was no other vocabulary available to him. The term was popular, it was catchy, it sounded like what we wanted to say, so he used it. But listen to what he's saying a decade later. In 1987, on Nagoya jail, Tosh has moved past legalization. I'm sure we've all heard the lyrics in that song, right? He's rejecting the idea that the state should regulate the herb at all, which reminds me of what Sister Mimie was saying, that self-regulation, she said it a number of times. Self-regulation is what we're talking about, right? Tosh is saying that the state doesn't have any say-so in regulating the herb, right? And now this was 40 years ago. This is the direction we should be moving in. Peter Tosh is telling us that legalization was not saying what we wanted to say or what we want to say. Okay, I mentioned Peter Tosh because we have said legalize it a lot since we heard it from Tosh. And since the turn of the century, we've pushed it to sacramental legalization, speaking other people's language, way into the 21st century. And of course, we've won some victories, right, which have to be celebrated, right? It's a struggle, it faces, everything that has been done is useful. You know, we can't take anything away from it. So we celebrate that. But we have to bear in mind that the sacramental exemption argument has worked for Rastafari in the Caribbean courts because Rastafari is the main identifiable culture associated with holistic marijuana use over there. Africa is a bit different. When Gareth Prince, which Sister Mimie was who Sister Mimie was talking about, tried to use the sacramental model in South Africa, it did not work. His initial case, he was talking about religious rights for Rasta people. It didn't work. He had to modify his case. In fact, he took the case to several courts in South Africa, took it internationally, and it did not work. So he came back and he modified the case to make it more inclusive before the privacy use exception was granted. Across the continent, indigenous marijuana cultures have functioned with their own holistic meanings and uses long before the 20th century, as our sister from South Africa was pointing out. Now, this was very, very clear to the outside world during the first attempt to ban the herb globally. During the 1925 treaty deliberations, delegates agreed that prohibition wouldn't work in Africa, right? So there won't be any prohibition, so there won't be any legalization, right? Africans don't have anything to do with that conversation. The French delegate, for instance, said that in the Congo, you know, there are several, he used the word tribes, right? Among whom the habit is very prevalent. The habit of using marijuana is very prevalent. And then he said, it would therefore be hypocritical on my part to sign a convention laying down strict measures in this respect. I'm sure some of us have heard about the Binaramba, you know, it's written about by a European, I would say, explorer. And he described them as a cult, right? And the one thing that their name is synonymous with marijuana, right? During that 1925 treaty deliberations, we heard you read a report from a subcommittee that said straight up that, okay, prohibition might work in highly developed countries, but not in Central Africa and Central Asia, right? In 1934, a report of the League of Nations said marijuana use was a feature mainly among the Asiatic and African peoples, that it was deep-rooted in ancient populations, which means some other people than Europe that consider themselves modern. You know, more recently, someone like Chris Duval, one of the foremost, let's say, researchers into marijuana in Africa, and he wrote a book called The African Roots of Marijuana, I think, yeah. He suggested that marijuana smoking is Africa's gift to the world. But what have we done with this widespread understanding of our own history and culture instead of using other people's ideas? At the level of statecraft, Ali Sohili, who came in as the head of state of Comoros, canceled cannabis prohibition around 1975, 1976. His policies in general rubbed the West wrong. So they came and overthrew him and assassinated him, and they executed him. But he canceled it. He wasn't waiting on anybody to come and tell us because he knew who we were as a people. Before that, there was Nyamineba in Ghana. They were arrested for using, possessing, and cultivating Indian hemp in 1963. In court, they refused the imposed name and meaning of Indian hemp, right? That's what they call it in Ghana, right? Or at least they used to call it Indian hemp, right? Doesn't make sense to us at all, right? Other people had been to court and they would just talk about whether they're guilty or innocent. No, I'm not guilty. These guys went to court and were like, nah, the thing we are using is not Indian hemp, right? They're not accepting other people's meanings. All right. They wanted to cross-examine the state chemists to prove that they are herbs of life. That's what they call theirs. They call them the herbs of life. They say the herbs of life was not Indian hemp. Now that is where we have to be standing with this thing. What is our own meaning? They moved the conversation past legal technicality to an indigenous way of knowing. When we stop using other people's meanings and categories, we will have the clarity to help the governments to act, our governments, African governments to act. Unlike Ali Soili, heads of state generally worry about treaty compliance. We should make it easier for them to move forward what we're asking for. Right now, there's a technical debate going on in the global north over whether the drug treaties actually prohibit marijuana. We do not have to be involved in that conversation, but at least it points in the rightness of our rejecting prohibition in Africa, right? We just talked about the 1925 treaty deliberations. Let's just move it forward to the 1961 single convention itself, the treaty itself, which made an accommodation for small, clearly determined groups that use marijuana for religious or magical purposes. So right there, Rasta could ride with that, right? But what about the larger marijuana community? The non-Rasta pushers, the non-Rasta people who sustain the culture generation after generation and pay the price as well. When African governments signed the treaties, Ghana, for instance, signed in 1961, that's soon after the thing came into effect. When they signed it, they did so with the understanding that it was up to them to apply its terms according to the cultural and historical realities in their own countries. Unfortunately, under pressure from the war on drugs and the regulatory bodies like the INCB, African states deferred to other people's framing of what the herb is. We have to make it okay for African governments to channel the authority of our own interpretation according to Africa's own very well-known deeper record with the herb. We don't want to use other people's concepts and be granted legalization, and then we'll be returning to court and review boards complaining about continued persecution, as is the case in South Africa and Jamaica presently. Legalization allows the police to check how many rolls you have on you, how many trees you've planted. If we're going to bring this across the finish line, which we're going to have to do anyway, which we are doing, that would mean removing that possibility of them coming back altogether. Peter Tosh moved from asking for the herb to be legalized to refusing to go to jail. These are two very different things. Nyamineba rejected the law books, meaning altogether. Our task now is to draw the final line with finality continentally, like as Jahpila was saying, as the sister was saying, we have to move as a continent together, So let's do this together. Thank you. Yeah, I see Congo has something to say. Congo.
Yes, I give thanks. I'm on there. Give thanks,
Yeah.
Coming
Yes,
out of the
yes.
South Africa, No, I see the topic of the discussion is the finish line, but I don't think we're anywhere close to the finish line in this ganja. I give thanks for the speaker just now because he actually give I and I the impetus to really say something. Because what I see going on with the ganja is it's a narrative that is created by a lot of people, and we don't want to disturb their narrative, you know, even as Rasta. Because first of all, this whole initiative started 2014 with Jamaica visiting the Justice Minister, visiting the United Nations, with the Rasta IRV, and link up with certain Rasta from South Africa, the United Nations, analyzing how Rasta have that status within the United Nations, because that's where it started, 1996, where Rasta was given that recognition as a religion, and because of such, then, you know, and this is what the great Prince 2000 initiated when he was busted personally. He had to draw for that clause. And as the speaker was just saying now, he's putting it, I think he's got a good picture of what's going on when he talks about legalize it, and even the legalization movement in America and so on. All these things are separate things that are as common board. But we, as the Rastas from 1996 through Congo-Wato, we did get that observer status in the UN under the International Rastafari Development Society. You see, so this thing started 2014, which led into what is called the South Africa-Jamaica bilateral, to which I personally am the representative from Jamaica in that bilateral, still in South Africa. So, you know, the whole procedure that is going on, because when we got that observer status, 96, the headline in the newspaper was, "The United Nations is gone cartoon because they give ganja smoking Rastas observer status, ganja smoking Rastas." So from there, there has been a distraction or a derailment to prevent Rastas, because opium bill England, wherever, cocaine bill America. Well, you see, the ganja, according to prophecy, it was supposed to build a nation, you see. But because those who are more advanced in their studies, they see and try to derail this development from the Rastas. And it took place in the South Africa, Jamaica bilateral. This is where we have to take this matter from, because this is where the whole mission was infiltrated. As the brethren says, Garrett started out with his a personal thing because he was busted, and then he moved towards sacrament, and then he restructured his approach. You see, well, that restructured approach, you would call it the Smithsonian Caroliani, Jake's Omiak, these capitalist infiltration that Garrett Prince did approach the courts with Caroliani export paper. So what has been in place since is the white monopoly trying to ride on Rasta's back through the UN. And at the end of the day, give Rasta not even his sacramental rights, because Rastas have been caught up in their system where the thing went into what is called a private bill. Now Rasta is looking for exemption under private bill, when most of the Rastas now, they're fighting. They came out to fight religion, fight sacrament. These are by the agents who bring in these elements to blindfold Rasta with their rights, because it's only Rasta is recognized in the UN. Maybe there are some of the other ones, but I know Rasta is recognized as a religious factor, which gives him that right to deal with the ganja, you see. So we were supposed to create now a model system with the South Africa-Jamaica bilateral, in terms of even South Africa as a black government coming up from 94, within its constitutional rights, it's got what is called IK, it recognized IKS. So that's what we was now, even from Jamaica, was supposed to innovate around to see how we could create policies as two government entity. But in the process of doing that, the government kind of backed out and private investors, the same white monopoly, came in on board. And that's where our thing just got derailed. You know, all those speaking going on there is white capitalists speaking, which the bilateral turned into what is called the CDC in South Africa and the CLA in Jamaica. You see, these are the two entities that have captured this movement within the bilateral and suffocating I and I, the originator. So, you know, I'm sealing up here because I have spoken to Dr. Jabulani in one of these kind of conference before, saying that, you know, I'm the one who is in charge of, who's representing the bilateral agreement with South Africa from Jamaica. You see? So when you're talking about the development of these things, you have to follow protocol. People can't just jump in through the window because they're expert and giving their idea of what they understand, their experience. This is a government to government bilateral agreement. This is serious, you see? So where is that development? It did go into a lot of research and what. But until we get to that point of the bilateral, I've explained to Jalani that if we don't follow up on what transpired with the bilateral between Jamaica and South Africa, then we'll never know. So that's why I'm saying we're not close to no finish line. We're only close to the white monopoly capturation finish line, even with the CRL, as the other brethren mentioned. You know, it's a total mess. So this forum, if I don't know who are the organizers, but if they're truly intend to get to the real essence of our people's right, basically Black indigenous people, then they must approach this thing without a fame or favor, you see, but to deal with the rights of the people and deal and speak with the right information. So I'm on a seal there, you know, as June amigos passing through, give thanks.
Yes, Congo. Yes, Congo. Thanks for that one too. Taken very seriously. And I think it's we just got to just maintain our own meanings still as we move forward, because once, like His Majesty say, if our intentions and our feelings and our thoughts are exactly what are coming out, we will get what we're looking for.
Yes, give thanks, Ras, for your presentation. Yes, Emperor Sheril is yet to join us. And so we have heard Jahpila and Seven Fireside lead a conversation and across the finish line. And we give thanks to Ras Congo for those highlights. Yes, so at this stage, if you have questions, contributions, or comments, you are invited to do so whilst we await Empress Sheril's contribution. Yeah, so Ras, if you don't mind, I'll put the same question I was trying to find out from Sheril about the need to, or why it is important to distinguish between policy implementation and policy change. But before that, please, you can note my question down. Why is it important to distinguish between cannabis policy change and policy implementation? We'll also take another contribution or question from Ras Lawrence. Ras, please come in.
Yes, yes. Greetings, everyone. Yeah, I was invited here to just come out from Sister Sheril, and I was able to let some other people know. Hopefully, they could join us. This topic of legalization, my opinion. Well, first, the issue of Jamaica and South Africa and government to government, as was being said. I have a question about that because Jamaica is fully not even liberated itself yet. People are still going up against police force and others in Jamaica. So where Jamaica should have taken the lead, Jamaica has now become a beggar country, borderline begging to define what is real and what is not real, particularly by the United States. It is the United States who has put in the pressure in a system that says that if the legalization of cannabis, even though America is legalizing cannabis all over, everyone can grow 6 plants, definitely in New York State. So Jamaica is just not very strong on this issue and not leading the way, because if Jamaica lead the way already, it would have been economically self-sufficient, just being known as a country where everyone can be an adult. So the issue is, the fight is getting government to legalize this, is that we need to fight for human rights from the vantage point that as long as we're adults, we can make adult decisions. Do not treat us like children. If I want to smoke, it is my choice. Allow me. If I want to burn, allow me to burn. So that kind of radicalized humanist aspect is what I would think that we want to bring to wherever we are on the planet. That we need to be able to be treated as an adult. We do not need the government to take over our life in that aspect. I think that's what contribution I want to make. That it's got to become that kind of issue that we get focused on just the economics of it. Remember, the reason why cannabis is illegal relative to America is because they used to make the sale for slave ships out of out of the M plant. And then somebody's made a decision that they wanted to ban it because too many people was coming involved with it. You were making the clothes, the shirts. All of this stuff was the early manufacturing process. One of the biggest manufacturing process was cannabis, the cannabis plant. And the side effect, it was minor. It wasn't even an issue. So if we move to where it is, they're never gonna want to legalize it. I remember coconut water. Let me just use a side comparison. Coconut was after the oils there was claimed that the oil was the worst oil ever. It was causing so much medical effect that they literally took it out of the movie theater because there was so much money being made, and they did not control it. They could not grow it in abundance in America. So it was being grown in the Caribbean, grown in Asia and in Latin America, but it wasn't grown in America, so they could not control it. So they made it illegal until they started to find out how healthy or helpful that oil is. It's the same here. We need to stop begging them, and we need to stop seeing it just as one dimension, but we need to be treated as an adult that could make adult decision for ourselves. That kind of legally is where it would start up in the court. You can't take a plant and make it illegal when I choose to use it and trade it with other people who wants to use it. Give thanks.
Yes, give
Totally
thanks.
agree.
Yes.
Yes,
So
Raskofi.
any more question or Ras, please, you can respond to that.
Yeah, just a little. I like what Ross Lawrence is saying. Like, leave us alone. That's all we're talking about. All this going through, all these that are jumping through hoops. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Just leave us alone. It's as simple as that. Let's say what we really want. If we can make them do that, if we're saying that, rather than going through hoops of legalize this and that, we're using holistically, as Ross Lawrence just said. That's it. Leave it alone. And I love our Empress Mimie kept on talking about self-regulation as much as she was moving it towards, working with the state. She kept on returning to the point of self-regulation, which we've been doing for way before Ghana became a country, way before Kenya became a country, way before, I'll say America became a country. We always self-regulate. And throughout this period of prohibition and persecution, we've been self-regulating. The marijuana community. You can't just get up and do certain things at certain bases. You can't just get up and do certain things at certain communities. So we self-regulation. So that's a little bit. I just agree with what Ross Lawrence is saying. We have to put what we're saying on board. I think we're just marking time at the finish line. We're not crossing it. We have to drag it across, and to drag it across, we have to say what we really want to say. So Raskofi. Oh, the Empress Sadia.
Yes, I. Greetings.
Yes. Empress, go to.
Yes, Raskofi, thank you. I have a question for Brother Indiba Benai, if I wrote it right. But I wanted to know from the brother how in Kenya, since they are more organized like that and have organizations, how do you handle the profiling and arrest of rastas who are stopped and searched unprovoked? And by unprovoked, I mean regular citizen that's just minding their business. But because they look a certain way, the police will stop and search them. Does it happen there? And if it does, how do you handle it?
Yes, Jahpila, you heard that one. How do you deal with profiling and arrests of racists?
Yeah, give thanks. So normally, first and foremost, since I Rastafari mostly don't engage in crime. We don't have records of Rastafari, of Rasta Brethren or Sistren being involved, in crimes that, cause a security threat. But as I had mentioned, we have this stereotype of Rastafari, as they portray I and I as a ganja smoking community. So the police, since the ganja is illegal, now the authority come in to enforce. So they will always, random search, towards Rastafari, and people. So, and even this leads to arrests, So most of the time, that's why we have organization, and we have to be active to be able, as His Majesty say, collective security for surety, we even have committees which we formed, for Ganja committee, those who deal with the courts, where we mobilize even lawyers. We have Rasta lawyers, like there's like of Rasta Mavenge, and many other lawyers who are Rastafari. So when Rastafari or Rastaman or Rasta woman is arrested, we send over there, or we mobilize with the brethren that are around, for his cash bail. And we have also funds. Sometimes we have been contributing to secure, because we know the only thing that can send I and I to them prison or for them to accuse her is ganja only. So to mitigate this so that most of I and I don't end up in jail, then their families are left to languish in poverty, and then you have family being broken, because sometimes other people lose patience, So this thing has been there, and that's why we had also, it was our main presentation in the court before the honorable judge, that we are being profiled, we are being harassed, we are being arrested for ganja. Even if you don't use it, you'll definitely get arrested, and the police will easily even plant it on you, say you are trafficking, which is a very, very bad offense to be accused with over here in Kenya. So this is it, but we encourage also the most of the people, Rastafari people, they are bold, clean, they always trod with their works, Rasta is knowledgeable to always stand up, and even educate, or stand up for their word, If somebody come to search you, you have the right to ask them, under which circumstances do you need to search me? Is there a security threat? Why isn't everybody? So also this, confidence is coming up within I and I, So this is the situation, and we still fighting for it to see that Rastafari still is free. So we face this same similar challenge. Bless.
Yes, can I come in?
Yes,
Can I come
Nana.
in?
Yes,
I
please.
give maximum respect to one and all, when US was able to ban alcohol, it lasted for only 13 years. The bootlegging and things like that, the white man had to go back to the former state of alcohol, allow everybody to use it as they wanted, brew it as they wanted. It lasted for only 13 years. Some time ago, alcohol was banned in America. Yes, they had to send it back to Bataan. I've been following this discussion. I mean, not just this one, this legalization of ganja, prohibition of ganja, whatever. And I don't understand anything about it. Really, honestly, I don't understand policy regulation, policy implementation, TH 0.3%. I don't understand anything of this. I think that ganja must be seen as a plant, the way it was before the white man came here. It was just a plant, like any other weed around. Those who wanted to plant it, planted it. Those who wanted to weed it, weeded it. We could that's the state we want. So I agree much with David with talking about word, sound, and power, choosing our words very correctly. And I think it's an education which I must take very seriously. But I think that is where it goes to. But that aspect which we are not looking at is that I think this thing, are we politically independent? Are we economically independent? How could a tropical plant growing in the tropics be controlled by somebody who lives in the temperate zone? How can somebody who lives in the temperate zone come and control how we use a tropical plant in Africa, in the tropics? It's about sovereignty. So I think that we must also look at the sovereignty as we look at this legalization, prohibition of abolition of prohibition, and all these things. I think there is something that our sovereignty is doing with it. Thank you very much. Let me stop here for others to come in. Thank you so much.
Martin, give thanks, Russ Martin. I think you're touching on something. You're talking about ripping aside at something more epistemic, the way of knowing, a way of being, actually, You're telling us that who are we? You're saying based on who we are, why do we have to even deal with this whole thing about, the logic they're putting on us, which includes the idea of legalization? That's their logic, right? What we want is just leave us alone. Take marijuana out of your law books. That's what I'm hearing you say, and that's what I'm hearing behind all that we're all saying here. We just don't want them to bother us. If you're growing a tree, nobody should bother you. But to go into legalization and all that, you're allowing them to come back and say, how many trees do you have? right? Because they'll tell you how many trees you can have, how many rows you can have, you know? So let's say they say you can have 5 ounces or 1 pound. And then you go visit your friend, and then that day he's so happy he saw you, so he gave you 2 pounds. Then suddenly you're in trouble. We just don't have to deal with that logic at all about giving the state the chance to regulate marijuana. That's what we're saying. And that comes to legalization and decriminalization. We're deferring to someone else's goodwill, someone that's not part of our needs, you know? So I see some hands up. And let's hear, you know, Congo and Russ. Please, Russ Martin, you're about to say yes.
You know, we mustn't make any fuss about this at all. I don't think we need any fanfare. Just tell the judges, just tell the policemen, turn a blind eye. Simple. Just simple. We don't need any fanfare. We don't need any announcement. We don't let telling about, jumping about. Tell those people, turn a blind eye to this thing. Let it be a plant as it has always been. Thank you very much, my brother.
That's it. Just leave it alone. That's it. It's as simple as that.
Could I also add, Chair? That they have removed a lot of colonial laws that was on the books. They did not adopt. We need to put this one in the same category as a colonial law if we're going to advocate on the continent and in the Caribbean and so forth. That these are former colonial laws that does not apply to us anymore if we are self-governed, as was just being said. That's the tactic that we must engage. That if you are willing to take away certain laws and rules that was put towards the control of the people, we also need to remove this one too. It's overstayed its welcome.
That's it. That's it.
Yes, I give thanks again, you know, because for the information, you know, that we can gather, and that is why we like to offer whatever information we can also, because that information that I gathered on the reference with the coconut, you know, it recalls when I was a little youth. We used in Jamaica, they used to have this big yellow plane that flies right overhead. They said they were spraying the bananas, but they were actually killing the coconuts because they couldn't control that. That's what adding to my experience here, you know, giving thanks for that. So you will see that the system, if they would do something like that, so that the coconut that grows in our place, we cannot have monopoly over that coconut oil, then you can see how much they would make sure that this ganja, we're not in control of it. As I said before, through the bilateral, we were supposed to set a standard for the globe, you see, policies. So what we see happening is the fact that just for the sake of even the brethren in Kenya, don't be surprised when the system deal with you like that, because we failed as the two countries to structure policies that can govern internationally. But I must say now that only recently the human rights is coming on board. So that's why I'm saying we're not really close to the finish line, because this have to be restructured, this old mission, because it has been captured, you see. So for those countries like Kenya, people will say that, pass all kinds of remarks about Sacramento, you know, but in the early 70s with the Judah, the Coptic church in Jamaica, they were shipping ganja all over. Even now, some of the biggest development that Rasta ever acquired was through that Coptic ganja business that was transpiring. So since I and I have been here in South Africa going 7 years, I and I have been telling the people about the sacramental rights. Now, this is the only thing that can secure our people. We know that ganja is a plant that shouldn't be molested. But like cigarette, even the moonshine and those things, to say that ganja should be fully liberated, it is a stance. And to say to legalize ganja, it is a stance that, but as Rastas and the Rasta community, we have to speak from our perspective within the law, because what you see Ganja Prince has done is generalize the whole movement, you see. It is not particular, but it started off with Rasta. So getting to the point I'm saying, this talk about sacramental cannot bring money. It's a sham, you see. It is something to blindfold us so that we empower the white monopoly over this ganja. Because we thought that the indigenous rights that is enshrined in the Constitution in South Africa, we could have utilized that to elevate to certain policies. But under what is called the IKS rights, but it leads into what is called now IKS and Friends. Well, you see, the IKS and Friends, those friends are the white monopoly, and they come right in through there again. Ganja in the original format, this is why you see Blue Light City in Amsterdam. It was because the king passed a decree, you see, and this is why one of our movement is to restructure the rights of the king, because the king have that right to govern the ganja or to make the ganja, But getting to the point again, I'm saying, what led to the private bill is still with Garrett Prince and the Constitutional Court that was in 2018. That leads to a Private Bill Act. Now, in my studies, I also got to learn that in order for our sacramental rights to be established, we need to have what is called a Sacramental Act. So even in Kenya, you could not approach the ganja under Private Bill Act for as Rasta. That is out of line. So that's why you're not going to get no result from the court. What we must first do in each country, the legal term is domestic size international law. So that means laws that the United Nations allows for it to be implemented in your country. This is where you get a bill. This is why the private bill could have created because of the rights individually, private use. So the sacramental bill is what you must implement, because in that bill is where it explains what we as Rastas do with our ganja. It is our food, it is our economic, it is our medicine, it is our everything. Now, in this sacramental bill is where you explain all these things to the government, and it must be passed in Parliament. There is 4 sacramental bills that are passed in 4 countries. I think Anguilla, St. Kitts, Barbados, they've passed their sacramental bill. Now, in that bill, it depends on what you put in it, and that is where the fight should be with the parliament, because that's where in your bill you're going to explain that this sacrament is, we have a right to export it wherever our people is, and we can import. And it's not for free, because the Catholic don't have a right to sell their wine, which is there. So this thing about sacrament and we're only empowering the white monopoly when we go that route, because everyone as Rasta, because Rasta if you are adherent to the faith of Rasta, the little Rasta on the street, when the police see him, he don't have to show the police a permit. He must simply say he is a Rasta, and he has to be left alone. You see, so we haven't even reached there. We're just trying to get there after 7 years. So yeah, so we're going in all kinds of different ways, and in between all these different ways is where the infiltration comes in and the manipulation comes in with the white monopoly, because they have the money right now in South Africa. To be blunt, the government of South Africa is like they've been captured, is like a drug cartel. Capture the ganja from the government, which is these private investors. And there's some serious information that I'm not going to just throw it out because I don't want to discomfort anyone. But this is a legal matter, and we're hoping to put this in the human rights hand to deal with this matter, because it's really been an abusive action that has been going on over this ganja, with these manipulation that is taking place, especially through the universities where these white consortium set up their headquarters, even as IKS directors and IKS friends. They're in the midst of the university, and that's what they're using right now. So, as I says, we're far from the finishing line, because even right now with this private bill in South Africa, July this year, Ganja Prince was in court. But what? He's now reconsidering. Ganja, from the very moment that bill came out, because we did present to the government in South Africa that they're utilizing the power of the upper house, the authority of the traditional leaders, without consulting, you see? And that's why the other day, 2023, they did forward the ganja bill to the traditional leaders as the final, and the politics amongst Rasta that prevented us from advising that ganja bill in the right way. It is a criminal act at large, which, needs to be looked into seriously. So this thing is more complicated than we're taking it as a cover and thinking that we've reached anywhere with this ganja. We have reached nowhere with this ganja than giving white monopoly control over this ganja. And most of those white monopoly is the homosexual communities, you see. Give thanks.
Yes, give thanks, Ras Congo, for sharing that much with us. Yes, that's so much information out there. We appreciate that. Empress Cheryl just joined us, and so if she's ready to share her.
Yes, I'm ready. I'm so sorry for the delay.
To share her take on the topic with us, please.
Yes, I'm so sorry for the delay. I was traveling today since early this morning to make it to Washington, D.C. For the Shashamani Foundation is going to have a fundraiser for the JRDC and all the other groups they fundraise for. But, greetings to everyone. Thank you for staying on so long. The education was very rich. I learned about what's going on in the continent. So just to start off my talk, I wanted to first highlight the fact that President Mahama went to Jamaica this week. And it's very, very critical that we take note of it and that we take action. We have to look at opportunities for what they are and take action once we have opportunities. What happened during his state visit was that Rastafari was highlighted as one of the treasures of Jamaica. Rastafari was highlighted as one of the treasures of Jamaica. And he was so moved that he even joined the drummers. You know, one thing that we underutilize is the fact that Rastafari is a linkage because we have yearned so much for the African continent, because we are the original, sorry, I have a call coming in, because we are the original repatriators. And I say original repatriators because it's part of the fabric of what makes Rastafari. We have this experience as repatriators. And Rastafari on the continent now should take this opportunity to reach out to governments across the continent. Wherever Rastafari is present in an African country, they need to show President Mahama and the footage of President Mahama in Jamaica and use that to build relationships with government. Once you take that step to build relationships with government, then you can demonstrate that Rastafari is the example of how those ones on the African continent and ones who are repatriating can live in harmony. We see this demonstrated in the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated locals on the African continent, because usually there's a mixture of repatriates from whether it's Jamaica, Grenada, St. Croix, wherever in the West, the United States, wherever in the West they've repatriated from, living amongst, planning with, in community with Rastafari that was born on the African continent. So I want to urge us to really not miss this opportunity to open up the conversation with regards to Rastafari being seen as not only the treasure, a treasure of these countries in the African continent, but also the perfect example of what repatriation looks like and how ones in the West and ones originally from the continent can live in harmony and can be one. So let's not miss this opportunity. Once we demonstrate that, build the relationships on the continent, now we can go into the topic at hand, which has to do with cannabis legalization. When we look at prohibition is a very costly exercise. It's costly, it's been costly in bodies, and it's been costly in morale. It has been costly with regards to patriotism. And then financially, there's a huge cost with regards to law enforcement. And that needs to stop. CARICOM has a very good study that was done where they evaluated cannabis. I think it came out around 2017, 2018, a CARICOM study on prohibition, and it shows that prohibition is extremely costly. So that's another writing that we need to elevate and come prepared to show our rule makers in the countries where we reside that the study has already been done. We don't have to reinvent the study. We just need to acknowledge that prohibition serves no one. With regards to, decriminalization and ending prohibition, we have to, and social justice, it's really important as we're driving towards, legalization from a business and sales standpoint, economic development standpoint, that we don't forget that there are still ones and ones of the Rastafari community still incarcerated. I think we need to do a campaign around like a say their names campaign. So let's do an audit and an inventory of Rastafari that is currently incarcerated across the continent in different countries, and do campaigns around their liberation. There's no sense in us freeing the plant if we can't free the people. So we need to know the names. I know in the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated Local Charter 24 in Ghana, my last night I was there, I was sitting down with the brethren, and they said they had a number of ones who were still incarcerated despite the movement towards legalization. That is not acceptable. We need to understand who these individuals are. Rastafari around the world needs to know their names, and we need to make sure that every time we come together, we're saying their names, we're chanting with regards to their names, so that they can be liberated and free and benefit from and enjoy the freedom that we all enjoy. So that's another thing that I'm very passionate about. So again, just to recap where we've gone so far is don't miss out on this opportunity with regards to President Mahama. Being told and shown that Rastafari is one of the treasures of Jamaica, and take that to demonstrate on the continent that Rastafari is a treasure of every country where we reside. Let's not forget the social justice piece and those who are still incarcerated as we're seeing these legalization efforts. We're giving licenses. We should not be giving out licenses at the same time that ones are incarcerated for cannabis, especially if they're not associated with any violent type of crime. Okay, so that's something that should be on the top of all of our lists as a mission. And we should be not only fundraising for their legal representation, but we need to be fundraising to put money on their books so that they can have while they are paying the price for us, so they can have some of the comforts and some of the food and not have to eat what is not comfortable or is not consistent with our principles. Beyond the social justice aspect and launching a Say Their Name campaign where we elevate the conversation around our brothers and possibly sisters who are paying the price so that we can have freedom with regards to the plant, we can move on to the economic development aspects of it. And one of the reasons why cannabis has been criminalized is because it is a source of economic development. It does liberate your ability, freedom of movement and the ability to grow. We saw that with Pinnacle, yeah? So we want to make sure that as we're taking these efforts so that we can be consistent and compliant with the laws and move in this legal direction, that we're building towards something. What are we building towards as a community? What are these ganja funds going to be used for? Yes, we want individuals to prosper, but there has to be a conversation about what we're building as a collective. We see current world affairs. We see what's going on in the world. Do we have a plan around our liberation? Do we have a plan around our sovereignty? Do we have a plan about where we're going to bring funds all together to build something for the community? Whether it's structures and on land, whether it's a commune, whether it's an educational platform, we have to have some type of plan of what we build together. Because my mom used to say, when dog have money and buy cheese. My great grandmother used to say that, when dog have money and buy cheese. So if we start making funds from ganja because we are the experts and we're just using it for our own individual desires, we've missed it. We've missed it. And there's no collective security. There's nothing that will keep us sustainable if one needs to rely on the other. So I don't want us to be operating in silos about building a business plan and getting funding and then building big houses and these things without thinking about what we're building and driving towards as a collective. In Ghana, we're going to have another global Black food sovereignty conversation in October, and Liata Wote, I think it's called, the Kwasi Kwekuandu Sustainability Institute, and all are invited to come so we can have this conversation about how we approach global Black food sovereignty. We should be able to point and say, this is the Rastafari storage for these grains. This is the Rastafari storage for lentils. This is the Rastafari storage for rice. That should be something that's basic. This is where we are our elder center. This is where we provide for our elderly that don't have families to take care of them. This is our bank. This is where we do education training. This is our university. What are we building? I can't hear what we're driving towards besides individual prosperity, which is, I have nothing against individual prosperity. I want that for all of us. But in addition to them, there's a certain amount that needs to be brought to the storehouse so that at the end of the day, when we're held accountable by future generations, we can say that we contributed to something as a unit in INIT. So that's another message I want to get across. Now that we start seeing legalization move forward, we have to think about what's the next step. So we have limited legalization. We're looking at the hemp plant, which is a big step in the right direction. However, what we use as our holy sacrament is, full THC, full cannabinoids, full flavonoids, whole plant medicine. So how do we take the conversation to the next level? We're not done. Well, we demonstrate that we can be trusted with a little so that we can be trusted with much. And we don't knock the first phase of legalization, but we are looking at it as a first phase. There's going to be more, and we have to continue to show up where the rule makers are, where the lawmakers are, as a treasure of Ghana, as a treasure of Kenya, as a treasure of Jamaica, as a treasure. Our culture has traveled all around the world, and our culture is one of love and peace and connection to the Almighty. It's an honorable trot we're on. It's an honorable trot that we're on. And people see that, they recognize us, and they give us our respect. But with that said, we have to use that to take it further, free our brethren and our sisters that don't get to, be with their families that are separated. And they were the ones who sustained us when we didn't have any other choice but to use ganja to survive. So I want us to be thinking about those things, the freedom and making sure everyone is free, the liberation that comes with financial security, collective security, and building something together. We have to find our most trusted leaders. We need to identify our most trusted leaders across multiple generations that will take us to that point that we can give the rewards to, give the funds to, so that it can be multiplied. Ones that won't bury the talents, ones that won't take it for themselves, but ones that can be trusted to build something so that we can know that this came from our efforts and this is what we're leaving for the next generation. Finally, about social responsibility, we need a long-term plan as to what we are going to ask the government for with regards to reinvestment, community reinvestment. So as there's taxation and permit fees, and the government is being enriched by this plan, we need to understand at a local level, at a province level, if it's provinces or states or regions, and then at a federal level, how is it being reinvested into the community? How are we fixing the roads? How are we educating the children? How are we investing in higher education? How are we becoming more competitive? How are we preparing our youth and our young adults to be competitive internationally, because the world is getting smaller. It's not enough to be able to compete on this road that we have our shop on. We have to think about global things. We have to think about global security, but we have to think about global enterprise. And I think ganja is a great tool towards getting there. And once we can put together our program with regards to ganja and that flow of finances and funding for a reward at the end, for an achievement at the end, then we'll be able to replicate it for anything. We'll be able to replicate it in textiles. We'll be able to replicate it in food. We'll be able to replicate it in so many other things. So that's what this is all about, creating a model through ganja, which will lead to economic development and sustainability and ultimately sovereignty for the Rastafari community. It's not enough to just complain because the program isn't what we want it to be. We have to have a harm reduction mindset to start. There's no more of us getting harmed for this plant, freeing people from prison, and then what are we building together? Individually, I think everyone has a dream in their mind as to what they want for themselves through what we used to call ganja man dreams, but we haven't really assessed what ganja is going to lead us to as a collective that we can replicate across all different types of industries, technology, textiles, etc. So ganja, I want us to start thinking about ganja as a model that will be replicated across Rastafari as we build towards our sovereignty, which we already have, but we need to exercise. And in order to exercise it, it is going to take financial security and collective security. So I'll just stop there just in case there are any questions, because I know the day has been long. And I'm open to any questions.
Yes, give thanks so much, Empress.
Give
You've
thanks.
given us so
Thanks for putting
much.
up with
Yeah.
my crazy schedule on the bus, train, airplanes everywhere. So. But it
Yes,
was
Empress,
worth
we
it
have
because
to.
it's a good coming together of Rastafari community for Shashamani, raise money for Shashamani. I would do it tomorrow all over again. Give thanks.
Yes, Empress. Yes. It was worth it because, yeah, you have some pearls of wisdom to share with us, especially with your background and the work you are doing with cannabis in the US. So we appreciate you joining us in spite of your busy schedules. So anyone with questions, we acknowledge and will act on. In fact, there are plans towards the President Mahama conversation you suggested. And so in due course, people will see plans that RCG is rolling out in order to make leverage of the visit, take advantage of all that President Mahama has said in bridging the gap between Ghana and Jamaica. The president is here. Maybe he may touch on that, but there are such attempts, and we thank you for reiterating the point. So please, do we have any comments, questions
And I
for
want to give
Empress?
honor to Daddy Bosco always. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our president and chair, Daddy Bosco, for the Rastafari Council of Ghana. And I also want to acknowledge you and your tireless work, Russ Kofi, in these important reasonings. So I meant to do that in the beginning. So count it to my head and not my heart, that neglect. But I'm grateful to have an audience with your constituents. Blessed love.
Yes, blessed love, Empress. Yes, Ross Lawrence, please come in. Yes, Ross Lawrence, your hand is up. So if you have a question or contribution to make.
Okay, yes, greetings, everyone. Yes, attorney, greetings. I was talking, I was on mute. Okay, let
Greetings,
me get
Russ
back on.
Lawrence.
I know, greetings, beloved. How are you doing, attorney? Yes,
I'm
yes,
doing
yeah.
great.
Before you came on, we were reasoning about the issue of changing the narrative from just an issue of legalization, particularly in the former colonies, colonial land of Africa. That one of the things that we need to reason from is that they were able to remove enormous amount of former colonial laws that's on their books or that was was standing and remove them. And we need to relate to the use of cannabis as one of those issues that is former colonial law. And that what we want from them is for us to be treated as an adult making decision about what we consume and what we don't consume. And that a plant that we find as an adult useful, that we should be not be we don't need government to tell us, government should remove themselves from that decision making process. So I'm trying to change the narrative. I'm not sure how hard that would look in America, but America on its own is legalizing the plant, and in some jurisdiction like New York, you can have 6 plants. So the issue of it, consumption is no longer an issue in the West, but the West is the one that forced it up on Africa and the Caribbean to put it as law on their books, that because they don't want them to become self-sufficiently. It was also pointed out about the issue of spraying the coconut trees to kill coconut, just so that Caribbean and other people don't have control of coconut oil until they become more and more clear the value of coconut oil. You know, so just the issue of changing the narrative instead of trying to fight them to get whether it be sacramental rights or getting it legalized in the books, to simply advocate from a vantage point that as we need to be treated as adults, make an adult decision. Give thanks to you.
Yeah, give thanks. I think typically how we do that, again, the roadmap is decriminalization to, and then hemp is like a parallel. So hemp legalization can happen anywhere along this string, but usually it's, decriminalization, then a medical environment, then a adult use environment or recreational. Changing the narrative usually happens when it becomes medical, and then what we elevate is, why are we severing the doctor-patient relationship? Typically for any other treatments, medicines, we don't sever the doctor-patient relationship. So that's one narrative to elevate. And then beyond that, because we are indigenous people, because we are Rastafari, it's our holy sacrament, we're faith-based users. Elevating the faith-based use conversation, that's something I do a lot in New York, to the point that now the Office of Cannabis Management of New York has faith-based conversations monthly with Rastafari and other faiths, Islam and all the faiths. So also elevating the sacramental use. With the sacramental use conversation, talking about treaties. So now that the rescheduling to Schedule 3 has opened the door to the conversation about treaties, because the rationale for their ability to reschedule cannabis at their discretion to Schedule 3 is based on the single use convention. But there are other treaties. So if they're going to, and all treaties are the highest law of the land. So if they're going to talk treaties with regards to rescheduling, then we can talk treaties with regards to treaties that protect our culturally protected rights, our indigenous rights, and our religious freedom rights. So that's another narrative that we need to elevate, is around the treaty protections, giving us the right to use it for religious purposes. And, there are people, even if you look at Catholicism and taking their communion, you can go to a Christian bookstore and buy a box of communion wafers and take communion at your house. You can go to your priest and say, I would like to have wafers so that I can do communion, or I want my mother who's sick and shut in to have communion at her house, and you can purchase these wafers. So there shouldn't be any difference with our religious freedom with regards to cannabis, where it's accessible, where we can purchase it for our own use. Then it comes down to the fact that our communion, our sacramental use, isn't just at the point of consumption. With a communion wafer, it's rare that you hear someone say, well, where was this grown? You know, what Psalms did they read when they were growing this communion wafer? So we are distinct in that way, where our sacramental use isn't just about the point of sale and beyond, or the point of consumption. Our sacramental use is based on the entire process from seed selection. I would even argue from the breeding to the seed selection to the cultivation to the manufacturing and processing, if needed, to the actual retail experience, to the transportation experience. We're not transporting ganja and pork together, things like that, to how it's consumed. So we have to educate, because we are so distinct and peculiar, as scripture says. We are a peculiar people as Rastafari. Our ways are not their ways. We are not of this world, right? So a lot of it turns on, yes, changing the narrative, but we have to give them understanding of why we're so different and why we need to be on a whole different paradigm with regards to how our product is produced, and we're the ones that have to produce it and authenticate it as sacramental. It's not something that can be mass produced and just stamp sacramental on it. It's something that has to be authenticated through our leadership, whether it's a priest or or a chaplain or other identified leadership. And this goes all the way from the seed selection process. So there are a few narratives again, to recap. There's the narrative around don't sever the doctor-patient relationship. With that narrative is we prefer naturopathic physicians and roots people sometimes. So our medicine is indigenous medicine. So when we're talking about the doctor-patient relationship, it may be a non-traditional or non-Western physician, but someone who is a caretaker, caregiver in our indigenous culture, right? So don't sever the doctor-patient relationship, and also understand that we need to own the custody of this plant from seed selection all the way straight through to consumption for it to be considered sacramental. And then the next part of the narrative is we are protected by treaties, and treaties are accepted as the highest law of the land for our country. So why are we violating these human rights protections? Give thanks.
Give thanks.
I hope that answered it. Did that answer the question?
I think that what you led in a particular direction, and it's appreciated. I don't think maybe my question needed to be answered in that way that, you talked about it, because I was speaking about the one way of arguing the case in the legalese and trying to go into the courts or trying to go to government in just trying to fight to legalize it or to do sacramental right. And I'm raising a different point to say that what we could be engaging them on, if we want to engage them at all, is on the issue of saying to them that we are an adult and we should be allowed to make adult decisions. Give thanks, Sheril.
Yeah, I get it. No, I heard that part of the question. I feel like I did talk about how you go to governments, but the challenge with the narrative is we are adults, we should be allowed to make adult decisions, is where do you draw the line, right? So does that apply to all parts of law? Driving a car, a license to drive a car. Oh, I'm an adult, I should be able to make adult decisions as far as how I drive, where I drive, how fast I drive. That's why I redirected you to arguments that have been deemed feasible and have had success that haven't been universally applied. If you come with we are adults, we should be allowed to make our own decisions, then you're going to run into that wall as where does it end? If they set a precedent like that, then it can be applicable to all different areas of life, where it would lead to anarchy. And we don't want to come across as anarchists because we're not anarchists. We are freedom warriors, but we're not anarchists. So that's why I didn't go in the direction of we are adults, because I don't think that's a legal narrative that will stand the test of time. Now, the doctor-patient relationship, and including our naturopathic physicians and our roots people, that is something that's very narrowly focused. That is something that's very, very specific, and it allows us to still have the freedom over our bodies that we should have, if that makes sense.
It does. The issue of the comparison with the car, I have no issue with them regulating that, that children on a certain age cannot participate in it because of the influence that it can have. We as parents, as adults in the society, don't want our children to become abuse that situation. So those kind of things can be limited. That there's certain limits that we can do, but adults at a certain age can make certain decisions. And the issue of driving a car, you have an insurance policy. It's mandated, so that if you cause injury to anybody else or any other property, the other person can be compensated. Give thanks.
Yeah, if I may
Yeah,
comment.
But then there's the loss of life. There's the loss of property. There's, insurance doesn't cover everything. And prior to even the insurance schemes, there was, just doing the right thing with regards to concern for other human beings. So when I was answering the question, I presumed that you wanted arguments that had been successful in the past and arguments that have viability. The argument, we're adults, so we should be able to make decisions for ourselves, it's not a viable argument. Not in this temperature, and it hasn't proven successful over time, again, because of the bleeding effect. So I'm not going to give you directions and instruction that will not be successful, and there's a lot of reasons why that argument is not successful. And then when you look at, forming a constitution. So prior to any constitution, we all had what we call fundamental rights and individual sovereignty. We are individual sovereigns, but once we as a people, and that's why the US Constitution starts, we the people, once we as a people form a constitution, and there's an argument that says that, we weren't even considered people when the Constitution for the United States was written. But however, once you form a constitution, you're giving some of your rights over to government for them to limit the potential for anarchy, right? So that's why, we've already given up some of our sovereignty as individuals in living in these jurisdictions where there's a constitution in place, right? What we can negotiate for certain things, but the argument of we are adults is not a strong argument because of morality. So His Imperial Majesty has spoken quite a bit in his speeches about, morality and driving towards morality. We just don't have a unification around what that means, what that looks like, and a commitment to execute with regards to morality. If we were a moral society, we would be less reliant on laws, constitution, and can be trusted as adults to make decisions. So I don't like spinning my wheels. I don't like giving people direction that's going to waste their time and end up, on the cutting room floor. I'm only going to give you advice that I think is viable, that has not been disproven time over time after time again. I will say to you that argument of we are adults is not an argument that has been persuasive to any government around the world, especially ones that already have a constitution in place, because of that transfer of lawmaking responsibility from the individual to the government through their constitutions.
Yeah, my
Does that make
sister.
sense?
Yeah, give thanks for all that you have said. But there was somebody opened another door, looking at it this way. When you talk about sacramental use, it means if you're a family of 5 and there's only one Rasta man there, and we are all using the herb in one way or another, when a policeman comes, he's going to take away my four of my brothers and then leaves the Rasta man alone. So somebody was saying that one of the earlier speakers was saying that we must look at terms like sacramental use and prohibition, all those terms, and then look at how it means in our context. Because when it says sacramental use, for instance, I mean that you are talking about for Rastas alone. What about those who have been serving us? Because many of my herbs, well, if I like to use pushers, they are not Rasta people, and some of them have gone for us, some of them have gone through for us. So if you are fighting for legalization, put them in the equation. Throwing that away,
Yes.
and then think about it alone. Yeah, that is what I said, and I think that is something that it's food for thought. You must think about that as we're talking about all this using all legalization, prohibition, sacramental use, and all that. We must think about all this is how inclusive are all these terms, so that if we can make it very inclusive, then if we win the war, win once and for all. That is what an earlier speaker suggested, or put on the table, thing that it is good, we can all enjoy. That is what the Bible was saying. Yes, it's about adults, making it all.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about, the only thing is that there's one point about when we talk about Sacramento, we're talking about Rastafari alone. It's not so. When we're talking about Sacramento, we're talking about Hindu community. We're talking about indigenous Native Americans. We're talking about, there are a lot of cultures that collectively we have a strength that we can argue and standardize with regards to Sacramento. Native Americans in their sovereignty have kind of carved out for themselves the ability not only to do casinos, but also the ability to sell cannabis on their reservations, et cetera, and so on. The challenge with us is we haven't built our own reservations in our own areas to declare as sovereign areas, right, where we can conduct our own business. But I just wanted to make that, not a correction, but just an update with regards to when we're talking about Sacramento, it's not just the consideration of, Rastafari alone. There are other communities that can give us strength, that we can give them strength and further the conversation in a unified way. Our sacrament is different and unique, and our approach to it is unique, but it's not the first sacramental concept, nor is it the only enduring sacramental concept, and there's strength in that.
Yes, Doctor. I was speaking on this sacrament, and we give thanks for the presentation. Actually, I was touched by your portion on the collective representation, because that comes right back to the sacrament. You see, that is a collective approach. You see, and as I had said, being adherent to the Rastafari faith doesn't mean you're a Rastafari, but you could. So, it's easy to be protected on that sacrament. So as a legal expert, I would expect there should be a clear definition of when we talk about sacrament, because the sacrament cannot be addressed under a private bill. It must be addressed through the sacramental bill. I wanted that clear because it seems like that not getting through over years now. Now, I wanted to share this information also on the development in South Africa as it relates to IKM permits. What we have developed in recent agitation is what is called there was a a gathering called the Pakisa, which was overseen by the president, which was to make some necessary. What happened in that gathering that a lot of ones is not aware of? I heard Sister Mimie spoke of the percent, because people, once you have a M permit, you can plant ganja, and people usually use the M permit to plant real ganja. And if it comes to the test, when the police comes and you show him your M permit and you're growing real ganja, the only thing that he can do is take your ganja to the lab to find out if your ganja THC meets the permitted level of hemp, which was I think 0.0%, 2%. So what happened in the Pakisa was that they raised that percent of the hemp to a level where it is like real ganja. So a lot of people is not aware, but many people are aware in South Africa now that since this Pakisa development in 2024, that you can use your hemp license now to plant the real ganja, because the level of the THC in hemp has been risen to a level where it can be considered as real, even medicinal ganja from the hemp. So this is why hemp permit now covers that, where you can have your fiber, your seed, and your flour. You see. So this is why now you would think that we've crossed the finishing line, because with hemp license plus with the hemp and all the big industry around the biofuel, petroleum from as hemp, that alone can provide so much benefit for everyone, you see, through that processing. So that's why sometimes we just humble and let the process go through, because people can still benefit. But as Rastas, any Rasta that is saying that they lead in our process, they must understand about the sacramental act. You cannot address sacramental rights under a private bill. It can just give you a little allocation or a little exemption, but that cannot do nothing. That's why he say you can't sell sacraments, so you want business, so you ignore that. I always been saying is like the story where we see the dog have his bone and he's going over the water and see the shadow of some other bone, and he let go of his bone to try and catch the bone that is not there. So that's what I see these Rastas are doing. They have that bone, which is their sacramental rights, and they giving up that because they say they want to be in the commercial, they want to be in the industry, when your sacrament is the industry itself, you see? So I just want to add that portion, but give thanks again for the presentation around the collective representation, because as Rastas, we see where the Rastas, they sit in our collective seat and they defend an individual beneficiary. Give thanks.
Yes, Rastafari, we give thanks and enough appreciation to our panel, Empress Sheril, Muro, Powell Esquire for a presentation, Jahpila, 7 Fireside, Kwasi Anokye, and Sister Mimie. I think we have gone past our designated time for the conversation, and if there are no more questions, we will invite the panel to give us their closing remarks. and we can bring the curtains down. So, can we start with Empress Cheryl, the closing remarks, Empress?
For some reason, I was having difficulty hearing you. There's a volume issue, but thank you for having me. If there was a question, I didn't hear the question, but I did have difficulty. But I did hear a little bit about the the raising of the THC and things like that to be whole plant medicine or whole spectrum medicine. And that happens. There are different ways that it's approached. Like, typically the definition is about Delta 9 THC. So it's a specific variant of THC. And what people are doing is using Delta 8 in addition to Delta 9. And then it still has the intoxicating effect of Delta 8. That's one way. There's also using THCA, which upon combustion, it converts into THC. So there's a lot of ways people are getting around the regulations to have the experience. But for us, it's whole plant medicine, it's full spectrum, it is our landrace strains, and it's the purity. It's the purity, and it's the veganic or organic methodology for growing. It's the spiritual aspects of cultivation or production. Again, the hartical aspects of production, no anger, all those things. Having a relationship with plant, talking to the plant, organically, taking the male plants out in an organic way, not using feminist seeds. There's a lot of things that go into, true Rastafari. I'll say certified because we're working on the Rastafari certification, but Rastafari certified ganja for sacramental use and ceremonial use. So, THC is just one small aspect of, looking at the plant from a sacramental perspective. THC is also one small aspect of the plant when you're looking at it from an enjoyment perspective as well, right? So I just wanted to say that. But Ross Kofi, I'm honored every time you have me come on your platform for the Rastafari Council of Ghana. It's great work that's being done here. Ross Dade Bosco, I don't come to Ghana and not hail you and make sure we can reason about what's next, because we have to cross the finish line together. That's the only way forward. Give thanks.
Give thanks, Empress. Exactly, we have to cross the finish line together. Thank you so much. Jahpila, Ras, can we have your closing remarks? Yes, Jahpila, if you are available, please give us your closing remarks. Yes, then we'll go to Seven Fireside for his closing remarks.
Yes, want to really thank you, Empress Sheril. Excellent gifts you gave us, you brought us. I want to thank Jahpila and Empress Mimie as well. She opened it very, very well for us, bringing us to South Africa. Brothers Congo, Ross Lawrence, Martin, Empress Sadia, Ross Kofi, Daddy B again, everyone that has made this conversation possible. We've heard different angles, we've heard a lot from the legal angle, like a legal angle, which is very helpful, but some of us are speaking from the position of that pusher in Sukula or Ayikai Dublo, who has no need or no use for that. And in Africa, we have things, we have a clear understanding of a plurilegal arrangement. So the government can have its arrangement, but every community also has its arrangement. But we have to actually establish that. So that's why some of us will say that we're not interested that much in government regulation. Yeah, so that's a position we're coming from when we're making some of these arguments. You know, when we say we want to take the marijuana issue out of the law books, and it's not going to lead to anarchy because we've self-regulated for generations, and the culture never went away while prohibition was in force. So that's where some of us are putting our energies, you know. But like has been said, we all have to move together. Yes, those who want to do the unilegal thing, yes, we need that. Let it do what it does. You know, we're pushing the plurilegal thing, you know, the laws of our own indigenous people, right? And that is what we want to center, actually, the marijuana community's own laws. You know, Empress Mimie said a lot about self-regulation, even as much as the interacting, interfacing with the government. She emphasized self-regulation. We've been doing this, so let's take it to another level. Let's build cooperatives, right? And it's through these cooperatives that we can do some of what Empress Sheril is talking about. You know, what are we doing for the future? What are we doing economically together? What are we building? You know, but I think to seed the conversation to a regulative arrangement where the state has to give us a go-ahead is not quite what we're looking for. So some of us want to actually stand by the pushers that we know who don't stand a chance in court, right? Who sustain this culture for us, at least in Ghana, in Africa, right? And we're trying to speak from that position. We're saying, let our own law come to the fore when we're talking about marijuana. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Seven Fireside in the D. Thank you so much. And Jasan, everyone, we thank you for joining us. Another conversation will come your way. Our next 2 weeks conversation will be a town hall meeting, in fact, a virtual town hall meeting addressing the state of Rastafari in Ghana and other issues that need our attention as a Rastafari community in Ghana and in Africa and all over. So we'll share details of these conversations with ones, and we trust that you participate, you join us to appreciate how we can move forward in addressing most of the pertinent issues that faces I and I community. So we thank you all for your presence. The conversation will be uploaded on the Rastafari YouTube channel, the Rastafari Council Ghana, and also on our website. The link will be sent on our website, the RastafariCouncilGhana.com. And so we thank you all, and we hope to continue the conversation until we reach that finish line. Rastafari, and we give thanks. Guidance.
Selassie. Thank you, Ras. Kofi Asante.
Yes, Empress. Give thanks. Happy to hear from you every time.
Yes, I.